Of all the poetry I've devoured, one poet has stayed with me since childhood, introduced by a teacher. At the time, I didn't understand the depth of his symbolism, but his words resonated with me in a way I couldn't explain. Now, with a deeper appreciation, I still find myself thinking about his work with new eyes. Langston Hughes. James Mercer Langston Hughes was born on February 1st, 1902, in Joplin, Missouri, to James Nathaniel Hughes and Carrie Mercer Langston. His parents' troubled marriage ended in separation when Hughes was young, and his father moved to Mexico to escape racial prejudice in the United States. Raised by his grandmother, Mary Patterson Langston, in Lawrence, Kansas, Hughes absorbed oral storytelling traditions and the deep history of the Black struggle. After her passing, he lived with his mother in various cities, eventually settling in Cleveland, Ohio, where he attended high school. There, he developed a deep love for poetry, particularly inspired by Walt Whitman, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and Carl Sandburg. In 1921, Hughes enrolled at Columbia University, supported by his father, who hoped he would pursue engineering. However, his passion for literature outweighed his academic pursuits. His first major poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, was published in The Crisis, the official magazine of the NAACP. Feeling alienated at Columbia due to racism, Hughes left after a year and sought a more meaningful life experience. Hughes took on various jobs, working as a ship steward, cook, and busboy, all while writing poetry. While working at a Washington, D.C. hotel in 1925, he slipped some of his poems to the prominent poet Vachel Lindsay, who praised his work publicly. This recognition opened doors, and later that year, Hughes won first prize in a poetry contest sponsored by Opportunity magazine, affiliated with the National Urban League. His rising literary status connected him with figures like Zora Neale Hurston, Alain Locke, and Webb Du Bois, key voices in what became the Harlem Renaissance. In 1926, he co-authored The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, an essay rejecting the idea that Black artists should conform to white cultural standards. His first novel, Not Without Laughter, 1930, won the Harmon Gold Medal for Literature, further cementing his place as a leading Black writer. Hughes' influence extended beyond poetry. In the 1930s and 1940s, he became a prolific playwright, journalist, and social activist. His play, Mulatto, 1935, explored racial identity and became one of the first successful Broadway productions by a Black playwright. Hughes served as a correspondent during the Spanish Civil War, chronicling the fight against fascism. His reporting for the Baltimore Afro-American provided first-hand insight into the international struggle against oppression. In 1942, he began a long-running column in the Chicago Defender, introducing Jesse B. Semple, a working-class Black man who commented humorously on racial and social issues. His major poetry collections during this period included Shakespeare in Harlem, 1942, and Montage of a Dream Deferred, 1951, which featured the famous poem Harlem, containing the line, "What happens to a dream deferred?" a phrase that later inspired Lorraine Hansberry's play, A Raisin in the Sun. Hughes's work focused on racial identity, cultural pride, and social justice. He was a pioneer in integrating Black vernacular, jazz rhythms, and blues structures into poetry, influencing later writers such as Amiri Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, and Maya Angelou. Critics praised his ability to capture everyday Black experiences with authenticity and emotion. However, some Black intellectuals, including Richard Wright, criticized Hughes for portraying working-class life too plainly, believing it reinforced stereotypes. Hughes dismissed these concerns, emphasizing that he sought to represent all aspects of Black life, not just the refined elite. In addition to his poetry and plays, Hughes translated works by Nicolas Guillen, a Cuban poet, and collaborated with composers on jazz and gospel projects. His adaptation of Black Nativity, 1961, remains one of his most enduring theatrical contributions. Hughes also wrote the librettos for operas such as Troubled Island, with William Grant Still, and Street Scene, with Kurt Weill. In the 1950s and 1960s, Hughes expanded into children's literature and musical theater, writing The First Book of Negroes, 1952. His later works, including Ask Your Mama, 12 Moods for Jazz, 1961, which blended poetry and music. Hughes' last major work, The Panther and the Lash, 1967, was published shortly before his death. He passed away on May 22, 1967, at Polyclinic Hospital in New York City due to complications from prostate cancer. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred beneath the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem, in a memorial designed to resemble an African cosmogram. The site features a quote from The Negro Speaks of Rivers: "My soul has grown deep like the rivers." Langston Hughes was more than a poet. He was a chronicler of Black life, a literary innovator, and a voice for the oppressed. Today, his works continue to inspire those who seek justice, truth, and beauty in the written word. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying and listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you love hearing about the lives and deaths of entertainment legends, subscribe for more untold stories that peek behind the curtain of Hollywood's greatest stars.